Started for any individual who might like to view this session later. Let me click the got it. My name is Malaika Williams, and I am a consultant in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. And I am the coordinator of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion portion in the office. So I work in the office. I'm not necessarily in the district. I work with the surtax, I work with the regional training centers, and I work with staff within the department. I will tell you that if you want the expert in this gifted and talented regulation realm, that person is Kathy Anderson. Her information will be given at the last, on the last slide of this presentation. But this is our conversation, okay? It's going to, although it's only you and I, Abby, we will just have just a mindfulness moment. Talk about why, Abby, why did you join this session? And then look at some regulations that specifically relate to equity. These are our conversation norms. As always, I just ask that people be honest and be reflective. That's so important when you're talking about implementing new systems, any type of paradigm shift. You always want to be reflective, be honest, be willing to share, and be willing to add to the norms. So I will ask you, is there anything any additional norm that you would like to add to this? Or is this okay?
This is good.
All right. So a moment of mindfulness, we want to always acknowledge that people come to conversations at different levels with different stressors or no stressor at all. But in the spirit of being in this space and sharing this moment, we have a moment of mindfulness. And typically what I will do is I will spend just 1 minute of doing a quick mindfulness activity, but for the sake of time today, I'll just read the quote. Mindfulness is a way of befriending ourselves and our experience. So I'm thankful that you are here today. So just a quick question. And what I want you to do is just not think about right or wrong, what's appropriate or not, and just talk to me about when you hear your earliest understanding of gifted and talented. What was that? What came to mind? What words can you share that you thought about? Now, it doesn't have to be in the professional realm. Your first understanding, your first interaction with gifted and talented.
Okay. Well, I like that you said my first interaction, because that kind of relieved me of having to feel right or wrong about this response. I know it wasn't. But my first interaction obviously was as a student, watching kids and gifted and talented get exposed to cool different opportunities or whatnot in the school system. So that would be my first as a learner, noticing gifted and talented students, going on field trips or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the smart kids.
So those were the words that were used. Those were the smart kids. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. And I want you to hold on to that. So what I want to do is just lay the foundation of the gifted and talented categories. Okay. We have general intellectual aptitude, specific aptitude, creative, divergent thinking, the leadership skills, the visual and performing arts. But I want to give you a moment to just read over this and let me know if there is anything that strikes you as different, something new that you had not been aware of within this KRS?
I think in my current, like having worked in education, like that this like definition is something that I was kind of come to terms with and understand. But I think for a lot of folks, I think what would strike them would be the different ways in which we can show giftedness.
Great, great. So when I talk to people in different areas, at different schools, with different student groups, one thing that they have pointed out was potential ability. Okay. And so if I were to ask you, Abby, what's your definition of potential ability? What does that mean? So if you were to give me a definition or what it entails, and I give you a definition of what I believe it entails, it really infuses and lets us know that there is a lot of subjectivity going on, right? It's dependent on our lens. But what I also want to show is that the National Association for Gifted Children, which is a resource that a lot of coordinators go to, also highlights the importance of finding children, students with potential, with that display the potential for achieving at a high level. And this is a position statement that was published. So let's think about the overall gifted and talented population as a whole. So at the top, you see the number of gifted and talented students. You see 84,915. So I want you to go and look at the breakdown and tell me if there's anything that strikes you. This is like a very quick, very brief data walk. Okay, and so in a data walk, you just put the numbers up there, or you might have you might do take something from the equity dashboard, some sort of visualization, and let your administration, your district leaders interpret it. Tell the story. What do you see? What strikes you? And so I'll give you a moment to look at that. What you want to pay particular attention to is the percentage to total GT, gifted and talented. So one thing that I'll share, well, let me ask you, what do you see?
Well, you definitely have some groups that are underrepresented in us identifying potential. Right?
Absolutely. So African Americans 6.35, white 80%, Asian 3.5, Hispanic 4.9, and there might be varying degrees of reasons why it's like that. But when you look at all the data, you know, and this is pulled from 2021, 2022, it does show that disproportionality, right? That exists. And so this is information that you too can access. I am not sure of, let me ask you a question. How often are you familiar with the gifted regs? I guess that's a question.
I'm not, like that was never the area of expertise that I worked with. I didn't have to do that in my former role. But,
Right.
so I would say very little.
And how do you get your information?
I subscribe to all the KDE news updates.
Yep, yep. Okay, so if you remember, I remember this was totally like an aha to me. If you remember the previous visual, one of the visuals was that of children. There's a baseball game being played and there's a fence. Okay, do you remember? You remember that? And so there's a problem, right? Because you have children with varying degrees of height and they want to see this game. And so their remedy is to do what? Have you seen that visual?
Yes, I have. So you provide the support necessary so that everybody can see the game.
Right. So tell me what you see in this visual, this graphic, specifically with the last one, the last image.
Right. So in this image, it's, where everybody has the same support and you have somebody that can't see. Then you adjust the support so everybody can see. And the last one is you take down the thing that's the barrier.
Absolutely. You take down the barrier. You take down the barrier. And when I came in contact with my first experience with this, I was like, oh my gosh, like how could I have not thought about that, right? The barrier was still there because what we have to understand is when you give those supports for them to see over, like in the second image, those children can leave and guess what? You have more children who come. So it's not a one size fits all, but when you just remove the barrier, right, you're assisting and helping so many additional children. So yes, I love this image. Now we could talk about primary talent pool, but based on the regs, the entry point is a little bit, it's flexible, it's easier. So we're gonna focus on grades 4 through 12, okay? And so what I want to pay particular attention to is that it does support using a combination of measures. What we don't want to do when we're addressing the needs of identifying a diverse population is get stuck into any one. And what you see here is that it says at least 3 of the following recognized or acceptable assessment options for identification and diagnosis. So what are those acceptable tools or acceptable options? So you have your portfolios, your inventory lists. Now, with the inventory list, when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, depending on the inventory list that you get, it may not capture all those potentially negative outward manifestations that could be masked gifts. Okay, so you really have to pay attention and be attuned to the cultural and linguistic diversity that may exist and make sure that your inventory checklists support those groups. Okay, you have your continuous progress data, anecdotal records, peer nominations, your tests, parent interviews. So you see it here, self-nomination or petition, student awards, other valid and reliable documentation, okay? So there's a whole list of options that are available to identify and support the identification of students.
Can I ask a question? So like, what's the research show on gifted and talented students who are identified in that? Like, what are their outcomes? I mean, are we servicing the kids that we were even identifying through this means, or like, what is the impact of what we're doing with this group? Because I don't know, these options seem pretty, like you said earlier, subjective a little bit.
They are very subjective, but what you find is that sometimes, and obviously I can't speak for every situation. I can't speak for the over 170 some odd districts, but I have seen where districts get used to using one particular assessment option, right? And so it's not very flexible. It doesn't take into account student need. It's attuned to what the adults need, right? And I totally understand time and money, but some of these are very easy options to include. Now, one of the most fundamental assessment options is the lens by which an instructor, a teacher views the child. That's going to be the first layer that you have to, come in contact with. Okay. And when it says potential, that is, okay, do I have the lens to see that this student, if giving the proper supports and resources, has the potential to produce work at a high quality, all right? So in your question about outcomes, there are certain things that have to be factored in. It's the quality of the services that you provide. It's the frequency of the, so there are a lot of things that come into that have to be considered when you're talking about gifted and talented education. We know that funding comes and goes. Having the resources or the person to actually provide those extra supports. I've seen that in the arts, the performing arts, sometimes you may not have an individual who is available to provide those supports. So I can look and provide you some information on that. I'll see if I can pull some numbers to give you an idea of what the outcomes are. And so this is another document that was produced by the National Association for Gifted Children in support of assessments, making sure that you use a combination of assessments so that you do not exclude students, right? You want to make sure that you identify those students who are in need of those additional supports, okay? When we think about the regs, let me not add my 2 cents, but there are exceptions and special considerations, right? It is very easy to say the regs do not support. It's very easy. My goal is to let you know and to show you how the regs do support. Right. And here we have KAR 3:285 that says exceptions and special considerations for eligibility, specifically for disadvantaged, underachieving, and exceptional children. So who are we talking about? We're talking about the child who might curse you out, who sleep in class, disruptive, the student who can enter the door and change the whole classroom environment, right? The person who who has issue with the rules, who is always challenging, finding some sort of disconnect. the impatient child, the aggressive student, the impulsive, the withdrawn. So there are so many behaviors that are exhibited by children and students who are gifted that could be mistaken, right, as deviant behaviors. And those are rooted in, there's research that supports that. But again, you have to have individuals who don't lean into that first initial fifth, 10th interaction with a student, who really does or conducts like a root cause analysis to peel away those layers to try to determine what and why is this child having these type of situations, outbursts. Why are they not productive? Why are they only achieving at a satisfactory level? I had actually, I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and she saw this slide, and she had mentioned to me about a student she had come in contact with who displayed just about all of these behaviors. And so the teachers got together, they talked about the student, they performed some assessments, gave the student some additional supports. He graduated salutatorian and is currently at Duke. And she said it just took a person to look beyond his boredom, right? He didn't find it engaging. It wasn't personal, right? He just at that time was not receiving the necessary supports that he needed to be successful. And once it was given, he blossomed. There is a portion of the reg that talks about the placement committee. What I will call your attention to is the mention of the word "and other appropriate personnel." Now, who can that other appropriate personnel be? So, of course, we know that classroom teachers, administrators, counselors, right? Those are individuals who follow district policies. But what about other people? Who are those other people in the district who follow district policies, who can advocate for the best interest of the child? Now, I will acknowledge that these individuals are not ones that may be appropriate in each and every situation. But when we talk about recognizing and seeing students through a different lens, who might be able to give a different perspective, it is important that we have a wide array, a diverse assembly of individuals who can speak on that student's behalf. Sometimes, depending on how you identify students, if a student knows that he or she is being identified, ask the student, right? So who in this school, who in this district knows you and you can identify to speak on your behalf? Who is it? Right? Not limiting, not dismissing the bus driver who sees the student every day, who knows how they are in the morning and how they are in the evening and their interactions with students, right? The office staff, the custodians, substitute teachers, coaches. I mean, there are an array of individuals who have contact with students, right, in different aspects of their learning, in the learning environment, who could definitely support seeing that student through a different lens. I would also like to let you know that there are DEIB regional staff who are positioned and who are available to sit in, to help dissect, to provide training, basically to support your efforts in gifted and talented as well. So they are available to you. This list is not exhaustive, right? So you may find that there are other people on your campus, in your school, who might be a necessary or a vital to sitting on your committee. What I would like to say is that collaboration is definitely key. I will tell you that when I had mentioned Kathy Anderson, who is the person assigned to gifted and talented at the Kentucky Department of Education, when we first had a meeting, right? I said, Kathy, I want to talk to you. Show me your documents. Show me what's the process. How do you identify children? And she produced a document. She produced several documents for me, and I looked at them and I was like, okay. But where's the angry kid? Where's the dirty kid? You know, how does the student who threw the chair, or who is frustrated, or who does not fit into that box of being the student who gets the awards and the accolades, right? Where are they? I need to see them. How are they identified, right? And so it was a very tough conversation. It was a difficult conversation, but because she was leaning on, this is the reg, and I'm like, I understand. I understand that. But I feel like this is only embracing a very limited segment of the student population. I want to see the other kids. I want to see those children who might be looked over, right? But guess what? In the end, we talked about it. We are working towards making sure that people know about the needs of marginalized population, about the resources that are available, and we had a wonderful working relationship before. We also have a wonderful relationship afterwards, right? So collaboration it might mean that you go in, you spar a little bit, right? And then you come out and children are the better for it. With anything that we do, we make sure that we always support the Kentucky Department of Education vision of making sure that each and every student is empowered and equipped to pursue a successful future. That is what we do. That is what you do. I'm sure that is why you are here, and I appreciate you. It is 2:29. And I want to know if you have any additional questions.
Oh, great job. I appreciated it.
No problem. I cannot see the chat. Okay.